In early 2024, the US government shocked North America with a decision that would send ripples across the continent and beyond. By imposing a sweeping 25% tariff on goods from Canada and Mexico, the US upended the economic status quo, catching businesses and governments off guard. The move, intended to protect American industries and jobs, instead threatened decades of carefully built, deeply integrated supply chains that spanned all three countries. Factories in Ontario and assembly lines in Mexico suddenly faced uncertainty as cross-border trade ground to a halt. Canada and Mexico, stunned but resolute, saw this not as mere protectionism, but as a direct economic challenge to their sovereignty and prosperity. Leaders in both countries quickly convened emergency meetings, determined to find a way forward. Rather than retaliate with tariffs of their own, they sought a bold and innovative solution, a new trade route that would bypass the US entirely, connecting their economies more closely than ever before. The idea was simple in concept but ambitious in scale: secure their economies from the volatility and unpredictability of American trade policy by forging a direct partnership. For the first time in a generation, the assumption of a stable, three-way North American partnership was shattered. The old NAFTA framework, once a symbol of unity, now seemed like a relic of a bygone era. Canada and Mexico, often seen as junior partners in the shadow of the US, began forging a new alliance out of necessity, driven by a shared vision for economic resilience and independence. Their plan wasn't just a workaround, it was a bold reimagining of continental trade, aiming to create new opportunities and strengthen their own economic ties. The Northern Corridor was born, a direct answer to US economic barriers, promising a new era of cooperation and growth between Canada and Mexico. It was a declaration to the world: trade, like water, always finds a new path, adapting and flowing around obstacles, no matter how formidable. The era of North American free movement, once taken for granted, was over. A new chapter, marked by uncertainty, innovation, and resilience, had begun. The continent's economic map was about to be redrawn, setting the stage for a future no one could have predicted just months before. In late 2024, Ottawa and Mexico City unveiled the Northern Corridor, a direct, seamless trade link between their nations. The goal: bypass US tariffs and customs, creating a closed-loop system for goods. Mexican goods would ship from Manzanillo to Prince Rupert, then travel by rail across Canada to major hubs. Billions were pledged to upgrade ports and railways, signaling a new era of bilateral cooperation. The project was more than logistics, it was a geopolitical statement. Canada and Mexico were reducing their dependence on the US as a transit hub. The corridor was proof they could build a resilient partnership on their own terms. It was a strategic pivot. When one door closed, they built a new gateway. The Northern Corridor was set to alter the economic geography of North America. The message was clear: they would no longer let US policy dictate their economic destinies. The numbers tell the story, numbers so large they reshaped the very map of North American trade. Every container, every shipment, every train car is a piece of a much bigger puzzle, one that's being rapidly rearranged before our eyes. $85 billion in goods diverted from US routes to the Northern Corridor in its first year alone. A staggering shift that few could have predicted just a few years ago. This includes everything from Mexican electronics, assembled by skilled hands in bustling factories, to Canadian lumber. Timber that once flowed freely through the US, now rerouted north and south, bypassing old pathways. The 25% tariff was meant to protect American industries, to shield jobs and companies from foreign competition, but for many businesses, it was a death sentence, cutting off access to vital markets and customers. Companies using the corridor sidestepped the tariff, saving not just money, but entire business models and thousands of jobs that might have vanished otherwise. Ironically, the tariff became the very incentive for building the infrastructure, railways, ports, and highways, that ultimately made it irrelevant, accelerating investment and innovation outside US borders. The US lost not just business, but $21.25 billion in customs revenue, money that once funded public services and infrastructure at home. The policy designed to generate income instead led to a massive financial loss, leaving ports and border towns struggling to adapt to the new reality. These figures aren't just abstract. They represent a real, ongoing shift in economic power, with livelihoods and communities hanging in the balance. The Northern Corridor's success is quantifiable, visible in every train that rolls by, every container that skips US soil, and every new deal struck between America's neighbors. America's closest allies have engineered a system that cuts it out of a major trade loop, forging new partnerships and strengthening their own economies. The economic landscape of North America has changed permanently. The story is written in billions, and its impact will echo for generations. The Northern Corridor stretches from Mexico's Pacific coast to Canada's industrial heartland. At Manzanillo, $2 billion in upgrades doubled port capacity, focusing on rapid loading for Canada-bound ships. Ships sail north, bypassing U.S. waters entirely, immune to American tariffs and regulations. At Prince Rupert, expanded facilities allow containers to move from ship to train in under 24 hours. Canadian National Railway's Northern Corridor Express carries goods east thanks to major investments in tracks and technology. The corridor's efficiency rivals the old U.S. land routes, connecting Mexican factories to Canadian consumers. Every link, from port to rail, is integrated, tracked, and managed as a single system. The result, a resilient binational logistics chain, independent of the U.S. It's not just about moving goods. It's about economic sovereignty. Canada and Mexico have built a formidable trade route, rewriting the rules of North American commerce. The Northern Corridor's rise has hit U.S. ports and logistics hard. Ports like Long Beach and Houston, once bustling with Canada-Mexico trade, now see fewer ships and containers. This isn't a temporary dip, it's a structural shift. Fewer containers mean fewer jobs for longshoremen, truckers, and warehouse workers. The very policy meant to protect American jobs is fueling layoffs and insecurity in port cities. U.S. rail and trucking firms have lost lucrative cross-border business. Warehouses in Laredo and Detroit are quieter, and the entire U.S. supply chain feels the pinch. Competing with a tariff-free, efficient corridor is nearly impossible. The U.S. government's own tariff has become its logistics industry's biggest disadvantage. The Northern Corridor has redrawn the map, leaving U.S. ports and workers to grapple with the fallout. The cost of protectionism is now painfully clear. The Northern Corridor's backbone isn't just steel, it's digital. Canada and Mexico built a shared platform for seamless, secure trade. Containers are scanned, sealed, and pre-cleared before leaving Manzanillo, with data instantly shared with Canadian officials. By the time ships reach Prince Rupert, most cargo is already greenlit, slashing delays. Real-time GPS and IoT tracking give businesses unprecedented visibility and control. This digital ecosystem enables just-in-time inventory and reduces uncertainty. Crucially, it keeps sensitive trade data out of U.S. hands. No more sharing proprietary info with American authorities. The corridor's private, binational platform ensures data sovereignty. The digital wall is as important as the physical bypass. Together they create a self-contained, secure trade environment for Canada and Mexico. The Northern Corridor is not just a trade route, it's a force that is actively reshaping lives and livelihoods across North America, touching communities from bustling cities to rural towns. In Mexico and Canada, the corridor acts as a vital lifeline. Factories and farms keep running at full capacity, jobs are preserved, and families can count on steady paychecks. Supply chains remain strong, ensuring that goods move efficiently and shelves stay stocked. Mexican auto parts now reach Ontario tariff-free, fueling the automotive industry and supporting thousands of workers along the way. Canadian food plants import fresh Mexican produce without extra costs, keeping prices stable for consumers and supporting local jobs in processing and distribution. Major investments in ports and rail infrastructure have sparked a wave of new employment, creating thousands of jobs in both countries and revitalizing entire regions. But in the United States, the story takes a starkly different turn. Truckers in Texas, once busy hauling goods, now find themselves waiting for work that may never come. Warehouse workers in Michigan face layoffs and uncertainty as trade and opportunity increasingly bypass the U.S., leaving once thriving facilities silent and empty. The Teamsters and other unions decry the new tariffs, calling them a devastating blow to American workers and their families and demanding urgent action from policymakers. Meanwhile, Canadian and Mexican unions praise the corridor's stability, celebrating the security and growth it brings to their members and communities. The economic divide is unmistakable. New winners and losers are emerging, and fresh battle lines are being drawn across the continent. The corridor is more than just infrastructure. For some, it's a source of hope and security, while for others it brings anxiety, uncertainty, and difficult choices about the future. The human impact is real and immediate, felt in every paycheck, every job posting, and every conversation about what tomorrow might bring for families and communities. North America's workforce is being fundamentally reshaped by this new trade reality, as workers, families, and entire towns adapt to a rapidly changing economic landscape. The Northern Corridor marks a fundamental shift in North American power. The U.S. is no longer the indispensable hub. Canada and Mexico have proven they can thrive without American transit. The U.S. has lost a key point of leverage in future trade talks. Now two major trade axes compete: the old U.S. routes and the new Western Corridor. Billions in trade and revenue are at stake, and the U.S. must decide its next move. Doubling down on tariffs could make the shift permanent. Reversing them might restore lost business. Every day the corridor operates, it becomes harder to undo. The lesson is clear. Commerce finds a way around barriers. The future of North American trade and its prosperity hangs in the balance. Will the continent reunite or fracture into rival blocs? The world is watching as Washington weighs its response.